I am one of the few people of the African origin that has a different view about racism. Maybe because I've had the opportunity to dwell, associate, intermingle with people of different background. The Arab, the Chinese, the Indians, people from Europe and America. And I've also lived in their midst. I've stayed with them, have done a lot of things, carried out a lot of activities with people of these backgrounds that I have mentioned. Both things that are political, social, and economical. That may be the reason why I have developed different views about racism. I've come to realize that racism is part of human life. In fact, it gets to a point in my life that I do not frown over it anymore. Because I have come to understand that racism is part of human nature. It is something that no human being on earth, not even the government, will be able to defeat. We all may pretend that we are not racist, or we don't have any feeling about racism, or we are liberal and we accept people not just because of their color or because of how they do things, but because we believe that they are human. We may pretend that the system, yes, does not permit people from coming out openly to admit that there is racism or there is anything like racial discrimination. But one thing I want you to understand is that from the level of my exposure, I've come to realize that racism is internalized in the heart of every human, and no human being will be able to defeat it. The difference between the racism in Europe, America, Asia, and Africa is that in Africa, most especially in a country like Nigeria, racism mostly cultural, and they are institutionalized, and people don't frown over it when it is made public. But in Europe, for example, or in America, the system was a little bit designed to protect people from, coming out openly to say, oh, I dislike people from so and so region. I dislike people from so and so background just because, maybe because of the color. And the system also does not, there's low or little, or there's no or little institutional racism, or what they may call systemic racism in Europe and America. But in Asia, when I talk about Asia, in Middle East, where that place is very pronounced, Middle East, Asia, then in Africa, they are well pronounced, and people can make racial statements openly and nothing will happen, because the system does not really go against such individuals or doesn't speak against it. That is the reason why people may feel that maybe in America or in Europe there's no racism, but if you are a traveler, you know that racism is everywhere. Yes, racism is everywhere. Racism is a pandemic too. It has psychological, mental effects on people. You know, I came from a country where racism is so pronounced, but we don't see it as a racism because, we have different types of racism. So the one of the racism that is not well pronounced in my country is colorism, which is very pronounced in most of the Western world and also Middle East and Asia. But you see, individual racism, institutional racism, cultural racism, and structural racism are are really pronounced in my country. And you can even come out openly to say, talk about racism, speak against a particular race, a particular tribe, and nothing will happen. The system does not speak against it. Even if it does, nobody will frown over it. People will just get angry after 1 week, will forget about it. That is part of the things we face on daily basis. And that is one of the reasons why I prefer maybe a country like UK or US and some of the other Western world. The reason is because in those countries there may be racism, yes, individual racism, but you can not easily pick institutional and structural racism in the system. There could be based on the people that are in those areas, in those institutions, but no matter what, they try to even balance it, even though it can never be balanced. But they try to balance it. But you see, in the black or Arab world, Middle East, Asians, racisms are very pronounced in those countries. Not because people don't know that there is racism, but because a particular ethnicity or a particular ethnic group feel more comfortable and feel cool that they are more superior over others. And that is the reason why, no matter what, they still, maybe because they have the political power, they still believe that they are better than people from other regions. Some of these things are things that we can team up to fight, do everything necessary to fight it. If not, there will be little or no development in our regions. I'm going to talk about racism, let me say, this week. There will be a lot of talks on racism. Maybe people will get to know more about racism and maybe develop the kind of heart that I have developed, and you stop frowning over racism because it's part of human nature. It's normal, it's natural, it's part of life. No human being will be able to stop racism. It's part of us, it's internalized, it's in the blood.